Hello everyone, welcome to the Green Man channel. Hope you're all doing good and well. So in this third episode of my revisiting of my favourite sci-fi TV episodes, I'm going back to the 90s once again, and I'm revisiting a show called Sliders. And this was the 8th episode of its second season. This was an episode called Post-Traumatic Slide Syndrome. So, if you're not familiar with Sliders, I'll just go briefly over what it's about. So, this was a guy called Quinn. He invents a device which allows him seemingly to be able to travel through a wormhole to other worlds, other kind of, parallel worlds, essentially, based on, kind of physics theory and all that sort of thing. And he ends up taking with him three other characters, those being Rembrandt, played by Cleveland Derricks, the Professor, played by none other than the great John Rhys Davies, and Wade, played by Sabrina Lloyd, and of course Quinn himself was played by Jerry O'Connell. Sadly, there's a lot of online forums, a lot of discussions about what really happened with Sliders, a lot of gossip, I think, as well, somewhat. So I understand, it was cancelled by Fox after its third season. That's when I finished watching it. And it always felt like the show ended prematurely there, but it did go on to the Sci-Fi Channel to a fourth and fifth season, as I understand. And sadly, though, it never really I think, had the success of its earlier series. And for me, the first two seasons were really great TV. I liked the third season quite a lot as well, but the first two seasons were brilliant. And that was where this episode belongs to, of course, the show's second season. And it was this show for me at its very peak. So this is an episode where the Sliders think they've managed to get back to their home world, because of course they travel between worlds, but they never quite figured out, of course, how to actually return, I think, to their own world. So can you imagine being one of them and trying to negotiate your way through all these different parallel worlds without ever knowing quite if you're back at home, your home one, when you arrive at a new world, which is where this episode is kind of rooted, in the Sliders thinking that they're actually back in their home worlds. But as the episode develops, you realise, along with them, that actually they're maybe not back home. They're on a different world. And I think the genius of this episode, if I can say genius, is how it unravels and how the little reveals it does to make you realise, of course, that it isn't their home world. Now, of course, that's kind of a predictable outcome. If they were back at the home world, that would be the end of the show. There wouldn't be a show. There wouldn't be sliding anymore. So obviously, you're going to predict, of course, it's not their home world, right? But I really like how they tease you with what gradually happens in the episode. So first of all, they see the Professor. I think one of the first seeming clues is the Professor seems to sell out, and he steals. He gets the credit for Quinn's invention for the sliding device, or the sliding. And this leads them, first of all, to think, oh my goodness, how could he do this? And of course, by the end of the episode, we realise, spoiler alert here, this is a spoiler, that isn't actually the real Professor, or it seemingly isn't the real Professor. And it's very clever what they do there. You never quite know which Professor is which, because their characters seem so similar, and despite one being, taking this awful, completely backstabbing, or essentially, betraying Quinn, the Sliders never quite see past that, and they never quite believe or know, because of the Professor and the way he is and the way his behaviour is, they never quite know which is the real Professor. So it makes for a really interesting ending to the episode. The other things I really like in this episode are the other teasers that it's not quite their home world. One of them is when Quinn sees a football headline that reveals that, oh, actually, this might not be the home world after all. So Quinn gets very concerned about that and tells Wade, and then they both, she doesn't want to believe it at first. She wants to believe they're actually back at their home worlds. But then the thing that clinches it for the group is when Wade sees that the Golden Gate Bridge on this world is blue. It is painted blue. She sees it, I think, in a picture or on TV. And that clinches it for them. They suddenly realise, no, they're not any longer on their home worlds. And then it's just a very entertaining episode. I love the ideas in it. I love how it's sort of builds up to that moment. And the ending is also very climactic, pretty exciting stuff. There's a great touch with the psychiatrist that Mr. Brown, Cleveland Derrick's character, has been seeing at the beginning of the episode, and that's quite a the psychiatrist ends up needing psychiatry himself after he's been told this whole story about the sliding and the parallel worlds, and this particular story where they think they've landed on a home world, but it's not the home world. The episode also raises some really interesting questions. I think it's the provocative aspect of this that really gets me, is it makes you ask the question, if you were able to do this and able to travel between parallel worlds, but not ever quite knowing if you'd ever get back to your home world, your actual Earth, what choice would you make? If you found somewhere that was almost identical, would you stay on that world and just accept that you're not going to find anywhere that's the exact copy of your own world and go along with that? Even though deep down you'd know that not everyone there, the people you love and the things you love, are quite, are exactly the same, so to speak. Or would you just carry on and try and find, your home world and leave that all behind? I mean, it goes almost to the fundamental nature of what it means to what life means. And that is where the success of this episode, I think, truly lies, is in asking those questions. What would I do? Well, I think you probably guess. But I'll leave it to you as well to decide what you would do in that circumstance. Anyway, from me, thanks everybody as always for watching. I really enjoyed this one. I loved revisiting this episode. And next time I'll be going a bit more up to date. I won't be going back to another 90s series next time. I will be going to the 2010s and to the very popular TV series, the recent one called The Expanse. And it will be, I think, yet another second season. Thanks all for watching. As always, do drop a like and subscribe if you enjoy these videos, or if you like my music-related coverage, or anything sci-fi, fantasy and horror. Hopefully this channel might just be for you. Otherwise, take care everybody, and bye for now.